All right. Welcome, everybody, to our weekly Zoom chat, which is this week about fixer-uppers. Still rich represent. Nice. So we've got, I'm here, Megan Brenwhite, the head of the Upstate real estate team. We have Jen Brown, our chief of staff, which is very exciting. We have Angelica Ferguson, one of the buyer's agents. You want to wave, Angelica? Billy Golan, one of the buyer's agents. Yay. Lacey Brown, who doesn't have her video on, but is our listings coordinator. And oh, there she is.
Oh,
We got some of our team folks here. And then yeah, thank you the rest of you for joining. We've been trying to figure out, because I've said like topics that we think that are questions we get asked a lot that we thought would be good to just kind of tackle all together and then build up a whole library of content. So if anybody's sitting in your shoes 2 months from now, they can watch a video, they can, ask questions. And I think, the idea of fixer-uppers came up as a next really, really important one, because a lot of people, I would say that's a question a lot of our clients ask, which is like, or they kind of get wrong, where they'll be like, oh, I want a fixer-upper, it's cool, but then, first of all, defining what a fixer-upper even is like step number one. Defining what a fixer-upper is to that person is step number two. Why you would want to buy a home that you feel like needs some work. And then like really what are the things about you and your situation that's going to make it easy or hard to take on certain kind of projects. So the reason I thought it'd be fun to have Jen here today is because Jen is a very DIY individual. She's like, oh, I'd like to have a wildflower meadow. Well, let me like do a bunch of research, like create a beautiful wildflower meadow, post like a multi-part video series on Instagram about how to do it. And I'm like, what is the best landscaper near Kerhonkson?
Yeah.
So, and we figure that both of those types of people are represented out there. And, and for us, it's like a matter of like.
And you can kind of swing, I think, between both of those. And I think that that's like, as I was starting to think about my own home buying journeys, and like the first home I ever bought was a home in Sullivan County, and I was single and I was overwhelmed, but I also like knew I could figure some things out. And then now I'm I still have that home and have another home that is like my more like long-term residence, where I feel like I can invest a little more and be okay, because I am very cheap, to like actually hire people to like help do some things. So I think that it's great to like start to talk about that. Also, like when you start to come into this process, that like it can be all over the place, and you can be super comfortable in the beginning or not comfortable in the beginning, and then actually get comfortable in the end, or take on different projects, and some things are a mix of that.
And I think that there is liking doing something and then having the time for it, or having the budget for it too. Yeah. And having the skills to some, and having the connections to some extent. So I think that that's like, you may be like, I can't like, I've watched so much HGTV and I can't wait to like transform an amazing home into something really special. But then if you're like, I work 1,000 hours at a full-time job, I don't have any connections with local contractors, it's going to be something that's like, that is so much of a bigger project. So that's the thing, we want to like kind of talk about things pretty openly and frankly, as always, without scaring anybody away from anything. Because the idea is to like, just figure out today, based on your current circumstances, or what do you want to take on, and what should you be looking out for. So I thought it'd be kind of fun. Yeah, I can share my screen. So I thought it'd be kind of fun. So our house is kind of messy, but like, I'm going to show you the Zillow link for this place. So this is a house that my husband and I renovated in, can you see the kitchen? In Livingston Manor, or near Livingston Manor. And I will show you what it looked like when we first saw it, because I think it's kind of fun. I was just thinking about so this is the listing that I saw. Okay, so it's cute, right? So you're like, oh, that's pretty cute. And then you're like, oh, look, I think there's an actual like dead deer body in that photo. So it's like, that's okay. We didn't have to do that. This was our kitchen. So I just posted a picture in my in Instagram. why this is so tiny, and an Instagram about that like shows this is now our master bedroom that has huge wall, like a massive window wall here and here.
Oh my God. The picture from today, it was too much. Like I can't take
Yeah,
it.
it's so beautiful. And the thing is that I sat in this kitchen, and what happened was we were sitting here in February, and the woman opened the I was like, wait, can you hear the creak from here? Because I could see it a little bit. And she opened the window, and I was like, you can absolutely hear the creaks. That's the bathroom. I don't know why this is so tiny. Sorry. So this is the living room. This room, this big room that you saw, this had a wall in between it. So this was the first half of it. The sliding doors are still the same. There was a pellet stove right in the middle. And then there was another bedroom where we again put two huge walls of windows. And that was like kind of it in terms of the photos. But let's just say that like this was a project. I'm going to stop screen sharing now. This was a project that when we took it on, we knew like the house itself cost around $90,000, which by the way, it wouldn't now. So that's another thing is like even finding fixer-uppers, it's more expensive, but it cost around $90,000. And we knew we'd have a budget of around $100,000 to like make it amazing. We ended up basically every single thing in this house is new, except for the foundation and the roof. And I would have said the foundation, the roof, and the septic system until approximately 3 weeks ago when the other part of the septic system, I get that fun call from the plumber who was just like doing some routine thing. I was like, oh, hey, your basement's like actually full of human waste. So we're like, let's get that taken care of right away. And this project took, we worked with a contractor who we had worked with before, and my husband is a designer, so he was able to do like a lot of, the actual design and build like virtual models of this. But it was a ton of work. Like it was still so many decisions. Like where are we putting the electrical plugs? Where are we, like what size windows do we want? If we have bigger windows, what will that do about the heat? Do we want closed cell or open cell insulation? What about in the roof? Do we want to put a propane fireplace or a regular fireplace? So this is like, I would say our place is actually, this was like the most extreme version. This was like a proper gut renovation where the rooms actually changed. Like the kitchen became a bedroom, the hallway became the kitchen, like things actually really fundamentally changed here. That is like one side of the spectrum. The other side of the spectrum, which I think a ton of our clients want, would be like people who are like, we want something that's amazing mechanically, and we just have to like paint the walls and it'll look great. Yeah. Which is really hard to find now because a lot of people are looking for those things that can see them. And yet there are still very bad photographs online. And that if you see bad photographs and you can kind of like squint your eyes and try and picture if something good could happen, that's often a way to find a better deal. But like, Jen, your house now in Connecticut, would you say that, I mean, it feels like yours is all cosmetic renovations, right?
Oh yeah. I mean, I think that, I mean, when we ended up buying a house in Connecticut that sat on the market since December. So way before of 2019 went on the market in December. So almost like a year ago. And had a few price reductions. And we saw it, I think, I can't remember what month we like ended up with, whatever, August, September, something like that. We like finally, we started looking. It was like, again, both of the houses that I purchased, I put in offers on the first houses that I saw. So I saw, I think 6 houses the first time I went up by myself in Sullivan County. I put an offer in on that house. I thought I was crazy. But like it checked the boxes of like overall what I wanted. And then the same thing here in Connecticut is we saw 4 houses that day. We put an offer on this house, and this house had been sitting on the market. And the thing that really had happened was a lot of city buyers coming up, and it felt like too much work. The woman that had lived here for 21 years. She had cats. She was a smoker. And there just was a lot. I mean, every wall in this place got painted. Let's put it that way. But we could see the potential, and it had like, when we say good bones, it had like, there weren't like huge red flags of, could we move in tomorrow and change things over time? That's my approach, is that, and it's the same thing upstate, is that, can we move in tomorrow, and is the bathroom ugly? Absolutely. Is it okay? Does it all work? Is it going to function? And can I enjoy this house right now? Absolutely. And
Does
can
it
we
empty
do
into
some,
your basement? That's the question.
it doesn't empty into my basement, but there's some small things that I can do that, you know, changing out light fixtures, adding some different, like painting things. Like I will be like the queen of like, just paint it. Like the kitchen, my kitchen that I'm sitting in right now, like, all we did was paint the cabinets and take some cabinets down. And we took one wall down, which was a floating, non-structural, this like crazy weird wall between the kitchen and the living room that made no sense. We had contractors do that, which again, first time in my life ever paying someone to do that. But all of a sudden it feels like a different house. And we've been living here the whole time and we haven't had to like make a huge sacrifice. Do I want to completely rip this kitchen out down the road and like have a brand new kitchen? 100%. But I think that the difference in a little bit, for me, it's like, I've never purchased a house with a budget of renovation. Like in my mind, I've never had like money sitting in the bank that I can just be like, great, here's my renovation, like quick budget money. It's always been like, I'm making friends with everyone at Home Depot. They all know me. And like, I like am watching a million YouTube videos, and mainly because I just don't have the funds to like hire someone. And then also my confidence just grew because I could like, I had the satisfaction of doing that. But this house was a diamond in the rough really because no one in the city wanted to do any work. They just wanted to move in, when really the house at the end of the day needed a fresh coat of paint to then feel like a brand new house.
I'm like I'm pulling up your kitchen thing because it's so, I mean, when Jen talks about like needing, so first of all, you know, again, like every time she shows her, like she like literally, I mean, not that this is like a bad background, it's not, but like every background you have is like the most jealous.
Well, it's hard for me with backgrounds, and this is like this, like here's a perfect example. Like, look at this light fixture, and like I look at it every day, and I'm like, oh God, I can't wait to take you down. But I think the other thing I will say is that I also have like loved that I've been able to live in these houses for some time, because the design decisions that I thought I would make and what I end up doing and loving and being is because I've lived here and because I've really seen how we've used the space and also had time to kind of like marinate on it. And like, I'm so happy that we didn't do these other things out the gate, because I think that we've actually found better solutions. Like literally, case in point, this is like what would be like the normal dining room. Here is like this like area here, but I was sitting there, I'm like, this feels just like a breakfast nook area. Like this doesn't feel like what I want as my like dining room. So now we're gonna actually have
God, there she goes
right?
with her beautiful
But
ceiling.
where the Christmas tree is we have a dining room table. I'm like, it feels like it's gonna be so much cooler and better here. And then we'll just do like a nice like a round 4-person kind of breakfast nook here. And we'll use that more, and it will feel like we've actually used the space in a better way.
So Jen moved into her house, and like 4 seconds, I really feel like approximately 4 seconds later, this is her Instagram, so you guys can see it, right?
Oh God.
So I was like, what the actual F is this kitchen? I was like, what is this like magazine shot of a kitchen? And this was like, Jen, this is the kitchen that she bought.
Yeah.
So what did you guys do here?
Okay. So what we did is, it's like, who find the thing, we got new appliances. We took down the upper cabinets and the backsplash and put up a floating shelf. Painted all of the cabinets and put new hardware that I found on Amazon.
You have the same bottom cabinets.
Same bottom cabinets. And I will say here, I'll give you like a little bit more just so people understand. I was like, I made like a design compromise. I was literally like, I don't know how to like do this. It's hard to see them because they're dark navy blue, but they are that ugly. Like if you go to the old picture where it's kind of like the carved out wood, and in my head, I was like, oh my God, they're so bad. Like they're so like dated. I'm like, I need to like put wood filler in and make them flat and shiny. And then I just was like, you know what? It's okay. I'm going to paint them dark. I can't even tell that they have that detail on them anymore because they're dark. And I've put like brass hardware on it, and it doesn't bother me anymore. So it's like the thing that like was like going to hold me back from like repainting them and like making them like perfect. I was like, it's okay. Like let's just do it. The other things we did, we got new light fixtures. All of the light fixtures you see in that picture are from Target. So I bought all of those, and then got some new stools. That's it. Target. And this is not a Target ad. I'm just saying that, you know, there's really good things to find for,
but
like,
it could be. Hey, Target, we're right here.
The only thing that hasn't been done that my dad's gonna do when he's here, again, I have handy parents, is the faucet, which I found on Amazon. It's like $50. We're gonna switch out the faucet so that, you know, we have a nice new one. But again, I'm super proud of the kitchen because I like to call it the Band-Aid. But I love walking in here now. And we didn't change that. We used the countertops that were here. We pulled inspiration. It's like a kind of like a chorizo kind of feel, which is great for the house, and pulled that blue from there and pulled it all together. But I mean, all in all, like it took something that would like pain me every time we would see this house to come into, and it makes it like one of my favorite rooms in the house.
So this is where it gets, so also the question becomes, why are you buying a fixer upper? Right. Yeah. So if you were buying it because you wanted to sell it, this is just about like the smartest kitchen renovation ever. Cause like, look at this, like, this would get like 1,000 likes on Instagram, you know, like we would get a ton of people to come in here and be really happy with this. And we've seen people do that. And it's not like they're like cheating or doing some like BS thing. It's just like, they're just having good ideas that can be executed inexpensively using the existing materials. And I think that's really important. And then for Jen, like, she is actually going to stay in this house. This is her home. Yeah. So it was a different thing. It's like you call it the band. I mean, I don't know, like it looks awesome. So maybe it's like, but I mean, I think last a long time, who knows?
Well, that's the thing, is I think that the important, I think we've all done this, right? I totally did this, where like you move into an apartment, you move into a house, you're like, well, it's fine. We're going to live here for like a year. We're going to like be here for like 6 months or whatever. And like, I did that in my studio in the city, and I lived there for 10 years. And so it's like, if you just don't kind of do it the way you kind of want it to look and what makes you feel good, then it'll drive you crazy. And then you'll just continue to like keep pushing it and being like, well, I wish we could do it, but we can't do it now. Now I feel like kitchen's done. It feels great. And down the road, if we like, you know, save up enough money and we can do a proper kitchen renovation, I'm going to be really excited, but I'm not waiting to do that. And I think when I looked at houses, especially I would say when I looked at houses upstate, and, you know, I was looking at a house that, again, will always have like the good bones. And when I say good bones, I mean more of just like, again, I can move in here. My bathroom upstate has not been renovated. It drives me crazy. But yet I like painted some cabinets, painted the floors, did some stuff so that like every time I walked in there, it didn't feel so crazy, and I could get to it, but I'm there to enjoy it. And I feel like so many folks that we hear from are, you know, they're scared or intimidated. I think intimidated is probably a better word, about buying anything that's not completely turnkey. And I think that there's so much opportunity to make small changes and get into a house and actually like really be able to be there and enjoy it, versus like waiting around for someone else to like see the potential. Because I think that there's so much quick little things that can be done. Paint fixes everything in my mind, like always.
Agree.
That's like, I'm going to share the screen one more time here. So I'm going to show you my other house in Kerhonkson, which is, you guys may have seen on Instagram. I was just thinking that, so because again, like this is a very different approach. Like this is the house that we bought, and I see this and I'm like, that's pretty cute. But it was like chocolate brown. These were like oldie timey, like wagon wheel, you know, like railings. My husband saw it and was like, these railings have to go. This has to be, you know, this has to be black. He's like, these railings are ruining the entire house. And I was like, what are you actually talking about? And then we took them down and I was like, oh my God, the railings were literally ruining the entire house. Like it looks so much better now. But then we got to the stuff that we couldn't fix. So this is when we bought our house, it looked like this. It looks like how it does now, this part of the room, except that the floor was stained super grody, really yellow, shiny. So that was a problem. So we had the floors refinished. If you can see these things, like every window, which is like what we love the most, is like that you look out at nature, it had like these like fake things in them. Luckily, we found out that our windows were so cheap that we could actually pop them out and take the little plastic bits out. So then all of a sudden we had clear windows. This was the weirdest. I mean, the house looked awesome, but it was a very odd setup. It was like sofa. This is a big lazy boy in the corner looking at a humongous TV. Go figure. So, and this was our kitchen. And I was like, the kitchen's pretty cute. I like the layout, you know, like this is one that I could live with for a while. This is what I couldn't live with as much, you know, like there was the same thing. I was like, if I have to look at this tile, I'm going to kill myself. Like,
Yeah.
But what's interesting, and this like floating weird shelf that didn't match anything, and like this light fixture, yeah, the whole shebang. But what's
God, the ceiling
interesting is that
fan.
my husband, he also looked at all of it and was like, I hate all, like, it feels so busy. I hate the extra like lines here. I hate all the
Paneling.
different planes. I hate the kitchen. I hate it all, basically. So we didn't have to, we chose to move out, you know, and that's where we moved out and renovated the entire back of the house. So again, it was like almost a gut renovation.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's a different thing. And that's part of one of the things that we were going to talk about, is that like, I put like in the, I think, description, like stakeholder buy-in, you know, it's like, if you're one person, like Jen, as a single person buying her house in Sullivan County, could just be like, I can live with this bathroom.
Right.
I can do this tomorrow. If you have other people involved in that decision, either investors, or because you have like, or whatever, you're like buying a house and you want to sell it someday, or often family members of some sort. That stuff gets complicated if they care. A lot of them don't care that much. My cares very, very much. So like it's a little challenging. So I think that when we were talking about like, what are the questions you want to ask yourself? I mean, the first question is always, why do you want a house? And why now? That's it. Like, those are the first questions in our questionnaire. It's like, why do you want a house? Why now? If you want a house because you love being upstate, you love being in nature, maybe you have some friends up here, you've heard about the great farm stands, you've spent weekends up here, your house doesn't honestly need to be that awesome right away to enjoy that stuff. It doesn't. Your house can be fine, and you'll still go to the farm stands. You'll still be able to see beautiful things all the time.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like I connected with that house, and it checked off. When I say it checked off these boxes, it was like, okay, I want to have land, but not too much land, because I can't maintain, I don't know how to maintain, or like, I mean, I do have someone that comes to like mow the lawn, but like having like 10 acres of someone to like mow the lawn, I was like very conscious of my budget. And like every decision I made, I didn't want a house that was so big that like I couldn't go there in winter, because there's no way I'm going to be able to afford to heat this thing. Every bedroom you have is another set of sheets and another set of towels that you get to wash. And every time that someone comes to visit, like there's a lot of things that go into like, you know, thinking about how you're going to use the house. And once you own a house, like personally, the list never ends. It never gets shorter. It never, you evolve, you use the house in a different way. My parents now live in the house upstate. Like they live there.
They moved from California. This wasn't like a little move.
No, they moved all the way across the country. And now I have a live-in handyman and a live-in gardener, and it's fantastic. And I'm very, very lucky for that. But, you know, and then the considerations that we had for this house, I mean, honestly, we bought this house because we're trying to start a family and we wanted good schools. And so like we started off our search based off of, okay, let us narrow down around where the good schools are, so that we can know that if we want to pull a trigger on a place, we can do that and not be like, oh wait, what did we do? We fell in love with a house that's like nowhere near where like we're going to be able to put a kid into school, hopefully. So it was, the factors always kind of evolve and change, but I get this a lot, and I feel like a lot of people again are so intimidated, and I will say that I don't know what I'm doing, but I am okay with like figuring it out. And I think that that's just something, as you ask yourself what you enjoy and what you don't, in terms of Megan's point of like, where do you kind of fit in this spectrum of like doing things yourself to like needing someone else to do it? Like, what is that? Is like the problem solving. Like, does that, like, I will tell you, like last night at like 8 o'clock at night, I decided it was like time to change out the like doorknob the doorknobs that I ordered. And of course, like I can't get it to work. And I'm like been on like 2 YouTube channels, like trying to figure out how to get this doorknob to fit on properly.
Well,
But I'm not like frustrated. I love that.
Our new space heater things, like our new space, like our electric wall mounted heaters broke and we installed new ones. They weren't heating up that much. I was like, okay, great. Let's just call the company. And they're like, oh, is it like a black and a white wire? I was like, yeah. They're like, it's probably the voltage is probably too low. I was like, wait, our contractor told us it was 240. They're like, yeah, no, probably it's just heating up to 25%. It's like, great. So now I know that, add it to the list of things. But I think that like the point is like, think about like, yeah, like if your point is to buy a fixer upper to be able to sell it and maximize your profit, that is like 100% different thing. You have to be brutal with your budget. And to some extent, you have to be willing to spend money on things for speed and for, and also to be able to like, depending on what market you're going for, you know, it's like,
the level of finish and all of that.
Sometimes buying a $30,000 stove might be actually the right thing to do for a certain kind of home.
Right.
So, and like, so this place that we renovated, we knew that we were going to also rent it. And that was how we were going to be able to afford to have it. So we were like, okay, it's like kind of like in the middle of nowhere a little bit. It's like not that big. It's 2 bedroom, 1 bath. So we're like, let's get a nice stove. Let's make it really pretty. Let's like, you know, let's make it really nicely designed so that people will come here. So that was important for us. And then beyond that, we just did what we wanted to do. So I think
if you're fixing something up as an investment, you also have to, like, when you go look at the houses, look at the things that are going to be expensive to change. Like, are there structural changes that need to be done? Move on to the next house. Are you going to be relocating a lot of plumbing? Move on. Because those things are really expensive, and it's much better to have a house that like has a good layout, but it's just ugly, and you can like give it a facelift.
Unless it's in the budget. So that was the thing, because we bought this one for $90,000 and we knew we could redo literally everything for around 100. We were like, okay. You know, so it's like, so that's the thing is like, but you have to, Angelica, you're so right. Like you have to be thinking about like, if your budget is $35,000, you better make damn sure your roof is good, your plumbing's good, all the mechanicals are good, unless you have like nothing that you care about cosmetically. And the problem with reselling a house is that like people aren't that jazzed up about a new furnace, unfortunately.
Yeah,
like,
even though that's a totally super expensive thing that they should be jazzed up about. It's not sexy.
Right. Like nobody's gonna care that my toilet flushes into our septic system now instead of into our basement. It's kind of
that's expected.
But that was like but that was like a $7,000 fix for us. So it's like, that's how it is. So the first thing is really know what you're doing and what your goal or goals are, and make sure everybody's on board with that. If you are not the only person making the decision, like talk to your partner, talk to investors, talk to whoever it is, like, everybody's got to be on the same page.
And I think same page on expectations of who is going to do that work. And timeline.
Or even who's going to manage the people doing the work.
Right. So it's going to be like, great, we're going to do these 3 things, and X so-and-so is going to manage these contractors, because that's where it can also then start to feel like, one, the money pit, because if you're not paying attention, you can start to kind of just like put out a lot of fires and then you're just kind of get off the rails really quickly. And then 2, making sure that everyone's on board with kind of like, who's dividing and conquering of who's doing the work. Because if it's the assumption that like, we're going to like renovate this kitchen, just the 2 of us, that might change what you do and like what your expectations are of like how long that's going to take and what's going to look like.
So I think that that's a really big, that was the other criteria that we were, so like really understanding how much time you have to spend on this project and how much money you have. And then like, again, like the old like rule of thumb is like add 20% to both to get close to what it'll actually be. The one thing about renovations that I'll say that should actually scare you, if it's true, is that there are surprises. They're not surprises as much in new builds. So with a renovation, when you open a wall, they opened our wall in Kerhonkson and they're like, oh, fun. Like, guess what? Like, mice have been eating your wires inside the walls and they're sparking. So we're going to have to take down more walls and like fix the wiring. And it was like, thank God we found that. But like, that was a big expense that we didn't anticipate. So you have to be prepared that when you're renovating, there are things that the inspector can't see. So they will be able to look at a lot of things, but anything behind the walls, they literally cannot see. If there's a part of the foundation, there are indications that something could be wrong with the plumbing. There are indications that something could be wrong with the electric. There are indications that something could be wrong with the foundation. But there will, like, it doesn't mean, also, let me just say, like, for the sake of all the inspectors out there, it does not mean you have a shitty inspector if you find a problem with your house a year later. Like, they go in for 3 hours and do the best job that they can. When you start living in a house, and I swear this happens so often, you live in it differently than the person before you. And it just somehow like triggers things in the house. And like all of a sudden it's like, this goes wrong, that goes wrong, and that goes wrong. And I feel like you're just like batting off those issues for like 12 months. A good 12 months. And then as Jen said, and then forever, if it's your forever.
And well, right, and then forever. And I see that there's a question about how do you estimate the amount of renovations. I'm going to answer this for me because I generally don't create an estimate for renovations, but what I generally do, because I Google overall, just like average cost for X, Y, and Z. So like case in point would be like average cost to like renovate a bathroom by yourself or whatever it is. And it's usually from there, just to give me like some sort of frame of reference and kind of from there. But what I always like to do is I like to start with kind of what do I want it to look like? And then start to price out just some materials for myself, because I think that also helps me really understand. It's like, do I want this kind of tile or do I want it to look like this? And I start to look at the prices square foot of like all of these things. And all of a sudden my design starts to like get adjusted so that I'm like, throughout the whole process feeling really good about it. So like when I was talking about the kitchen cabinets, I did research on like to change out the cabinet doors. And to me, it was not worth spending money for new cabinet doors in a kitchen that I hope to then renovate someday, when I know that I could paint them. And also worst case scenario, I could paint them, hate them, and then decide it was worth it to spend the money. So it's a little bit for me of kind of like testing along the way versus like sitting down, creating a huge budget and like estimating against that. I also have over time, I would go and get estimates from contractors, just so I would also know and have and become friends with folks to be able to kind of know what to expect, or like what are things that are like I'm not going to be able to do, and then I can start to be like, okay, those are like the core things I can hire someone else to do, and then these are the things of this project that I could do myself to help get that to a number that I can save for properly. That's my approach.
And so materials are an expense, and then labor. It's labor and materials. So you can go figure out all the material costs yourself. And then labor is like, are you doing the labor or someone else has to do the labor? And then, you know, if you're not sourcing the materials yourself, they cost 10% more because the contractor has to get them.
And this has been a big mess this year, is that just like basic building materials, the price went up 30 to 40% for things like plywood and like pressure treated lumber. And so
I'm still missing 3 walls on my outdoor shower. 3 walls, outdoor shower aren't in existence because we can't get the decking wood to finish it. It's just sitting there. Like there's no way, you can't do it.
So that's it. Like, so that's, you know, that was the thing that nobody anticipated, is that the supply chains would get like super weird and messed up, and the actual building materials would become scarce, like the basic building materials. But also things like, I had a friend who was renovating a home in High Falls, and she was waiting on her interior doors, which were not fancy ones. They kept being like, it's coming in 2 weeks, it's coming in 2 weeks. They were supposed to come in July. She didn't get them until the end of September. And they were, you know, they were trying to list their home. That was really nerve-wracking. Because guess what you need for a certificate of occupancy from the building department? Interior doors. Which I never even would have thought about that, but it makes sense. So it's like, so they literally couldn't move forward with their project because they were waiting for these stupid doors to come. So it's weird, you know, and I think that like, you know,
also you can work with a buyer's agent who has done this before and can help you.
Yeah.
Like I'll throw numbers out at my clients when we're walking around, because I also work as the project coordinator and designer for a contractor up here, and I've done several renovations myself. So I can give you very ballpark numbers that you will then have to go confirm yourself, but to give you an idea if it's going to be 10,000 or 100,000. Right.
Well, and I think that that's really important. And then, so it's like, definitely like, yeah, talk to your agent. If you want to buy fixer uppers, ask the agent if they have experience with that, you know, because it's like, yeah, that's like, that is something like Angelica has done a bunch and like, I've done a bunch, but like Billy hasn't gone into that whole thing yet. So he has other people that were like, dude, this is, you're like going to be the perfect match for Billy, you know? But it's like, if you want somebody like, who's going to necessarily be like, how could I, like, how much is it going to cost to like change these stairs out? Well, there are other places to get information. So even if the agent doesn't have it, and, you know, as agents, we legally are always supposed to be the source of the source. We're never, you know, and again, like, that's why Angelica said, very ballpark, you get another estimate, because it'd be horrible if we're like, it'll cost you $4,000 to renovate, you know, this thing. And then it was like $1 billion. But the other people who aren't supposed to give you information about that are the inspectors. And I ask them nonstop at every inspection. I'll be like, oh, hey, so like, if like this client just wanted to take down this wall, I mean, that would just be like an LVL beam, right? I mean, like, I don't know, what do you think in 3K? What do you think? And like, if you say it quick, they'll like often give you information. So I would say like during your inspection, just ask like millions of questions, because almost all the inspectors, certainly the ones we recommend, have a ton of experience with building. So they're going to know, like, they're going to often have like at least a good preliminary answer about like, can I do this? And like, what would be the rough cost? So that's important. Later, if you do more than one project like we have, then you develop relationships with people who are contractors, who are vendors, and you could call them and be like, hey, can you look at this picture? Like, what do you think it would be to like change this roof to standing seam?
Oh, I've literally called my electrician and like had issues because like I, you know, had an issue, built a relationship with him, and literally like I will call and be like, hey, like this is like acting weird or whatever, and like we'll FaceTime him and just be able to like 9 times out of 10, like he'll just help me and like over the phone and be like, do this, do that, look at this, and like, you know, I like messed up something when I was wiring it.
Yeah, for buyers, I've had like, so after an offer's been accepted, sometimes even, I mean, before when the market wasn't as quick, they'll ask us to bring in a contractor and get quotes on something. If they're like,
I've had contractors come and see houses with me.
Yeah, if there's a deal breaker for me, if I can't do this, X, Y, and Z, then you do want to bring somebody in who can actually give you a quote and then stand by that quote.
Yeah.
So that's real. The other thing, but like, you know, again, like whatever that quote is, put 20% on top. Just do it. And then assume like, if you think it's not a lot of time, it is, you know, and like you order an IKEA kitchen, you're like, IKEA kitchens are cheap. Like our kitchen right here, IKEA, so cute. Love it. With little handles by CB2. IKEA is missing half of the doors right now. So if you like ordered it, like you just can't get these things. So it's like more stressful than you think. And then you get through it and you forget the stress.
Absolutely.
I do not have children myself, but I understand it's a bit like pregnancy and childbirth that you're like, that was terrible. But the second I'm done with the renovation, during it, I'm like, I'm never doing this again. I hate it. I hate it. I hate myself. I hate my husband. I hate my contractor. I hate like literally everybody. And then it's done. And I'm like,
best decision we ever made.
Where's the next project? Oh no, I just like, Stuart did not enjoy me tapping my hands on the table there. He thinks someone's attacking our house, I think. So, and I do have a bunch of questions that people sent in from here, but it's basically like, make sure you know why, you know, like because the question for this is like, is a fixer upper right for you? Make sure you know why you're buying a house. then, really, 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 really think about your time and money and how you're going to divvy that up. And if you have enough for that, you can get renovation loans. Like that is possible. Even if a house is totally busted, you can get like a construction loan where they put, they wrap the price of the house into the construction. It's complicated. And the contractor has to like price out every single like screw
Everything.
and then
There's certain deadlines you have to meet.
So it's like, you're going to have to like work a little harder to find a contractor who'll do that. But you're going to have to work pretty damned hard right now to find a contractor who'll do anything. So that's the other real thing. Because we had some of the questions that came in and we get asked all the time is like, do you have any contractors you recommend? And it's like, I need to know like the actual hamlet that you're going to be doing the work in to be able to recommend somebody. And this is going to sound like I'm a jerk. Like I cannot recommend anybody to anybody who's not our clients right now. That's it. Like maybe friends and family. Right, but like those names are so precious because the good contractors get booked out a year or two in advance that like, if we have good people, we kind of got to like keep it a little bit under wraps so that we can make sure that the clients get taken care of. That said, we're going to have a very exciting announcement. If you're not on our newsletter, watch it soon, where people will be able to recommend, like it'll be a social, essentially a social network, and you'll be able to recommend things to each other. So we do want to facilitate that. We're not like total jerks. The other thing, and so the idea is like, and I see that somebody asked, are there grants or opportunities for revitalizing a fixer upper? I don't know of any. I have not seen any. It doesn't mean it doesn't exist, but it's what I would say is that it's definitely not something that I've ever heard of or anyone has ever mentioned. And we're going to do like, 120 transactions this year. A ton of them are fixer uppers. And I feel like if it was something obvious, there would be.
If it's like a historical property that's like zoned in a certain way, and you have to like do special things, maybe you could get something like that.
Like if in Newburgh or somewhere like that, like if there might be.
You're like in like if there is something going on where they're revitalizing the downtown of something. Like this was happening in Kingston for a minute.
Yeah.
But I don't think it is anymore.
Looking for
sometimes.
Oh my God, my
but like likely not for a residential property. If you're doing something as like community space for sure, or like
I'll say that and to Megan's point of kind of what that timeline of like why are you buying a house and what is that feeling is also maybe being able to look at a house and be okay with like, let's live here for a minute and factor that into your timeline and factor that into kind of what as you're looking at houses, because we know inventory is so small right now. Being able to see potential in things like this house was such a diamond in the rough because no one wanted to paint the walls and like do a couple of things, and all of a sudden it's a great house that we're loving. So I think that really being able to take a minute and assess like what your needs and wants are and your time frame and what you're cool with. Like, are you cool with like living in a house that's like not cool for a minute? And then you get a great house because of it.
And I think that like one other thing about Jen's house that's interesting is that her house, in spite of the paint thing, would have sold in 4.5 seconds in the Catskills.
Oh yeah.
Because the style would have like, there would have been multiple offers. It would have gone bonkers. So she has an area that this style is not as popular.
Yeah.
And that I think is a huge thing. So that's also another thing is like looking in towns that not everybody knows about. So let's jump in on, I have like a billion questions here. I mean, this one, what are the 5 things to consider when going for a fixer upper would be?
I would say, what are your goals? Like, how do you want to use the house? I would say when you're going into a fixer upper, how much work are you willing to do? Like, are you willing to either spend a year doing it? Are you cool with living it well? And it's like, what is your expectation? And then being able to create, I think creating some sort of kind of checklist for yourself of when you're evaluating houses in terms of, I think a lot of what Angelica said is true of, if you're looking at a fixer upper, what's to be fixed? Like, what level are you willing to fix? Like, is it cosmetic? Is it are you cool with like changing it completely?
I think
All
that
of
is
those.
total budget also. So that
Yeah.
to me gets into total budget. So if you think about your total budget for the project,
Yeah.
and you're thinking about which pieces you're going to finance, so that's also relevant. Is that like if you have, like, let's say you can qualify for a mortgage of $600,000, but you don't have a lot of cash on hand, fixer upper is not going to be right for you unless you can do the work yourself.
Right.
You could qualify for a mortgage of $125,000 and have another $80,000 cash on hand, and then you're looking in fixer upper territory. So
Yeah.
it's really important to figure out, like, if you have another property, like you can, like once you get to where we've been doing a bunch of these, like you can get a home equity line of credit. Like we could get a home equity line of credit on this one to do another project and kind of like shift equity around without having to sell a home, which is pretty awesome. There are people called hard money lenders who can lend money for, like, to people who wouldn't normally necessarily qualify for a loan, or they need it for short-term things and they're going to flip it into a 30-year mortgage. It's a higher interest rate, but that's like a real thing. It's not like a loan sharky thing. So I would say the total budget, the total time, what you want to get out of the house, the location for sure. And the location doesn't have to be one location, but it could be like, what are the characteristics of the location?
Yeah.
You have to
I think that's
decide,
more
like,
so.
what are your must-haves and what are you willing to compromise on?
Yes.
Yeah, and that I think is I think that's it. I don't even think there's 5. I mean, honestly, if you know your goals and then you have the money to do it and you have the time to do it, you're good, So, and then I guess the other thing is the availability of resources and labor. So that is another thing, is that, like, so if you're like, I want to do it in this area, I don't know anybody. I just called 14 contractors and they all say they're too busy to start for 2 years, but we need a place to live in 3 months. That's a problem, So that gets into the timeline a little bit. How do you compete against flippers who do this all the time? I guess the problem with people who do this all the time would be that they have cash. So if you're buying a place with cash, and that's like the situation that all of our buyers agents are dealing with right now, is like how to make an offer really attractive against somebody who has cash if you don't have cash.
I would also say that, to your other point of like looking at places that aren't maybe on the radar. So like my house in Sullivan County is in Bethel, and it's not Livingston Manor. It's not Narrowsburg. I'm 20 minutes from either of those places. I get to enjoy all of those places. I love Bethel. I think it's great, but it's not like it, especially when I bought it, 5-6 years ago, it wasn't like the like hot, sexy place to like, have an address from, but I love the area. I love the community, and it doesn't matter. Like, I get to enjoy all of those things. And I was able to find a great house that I could afford in that spot. So I think that also being able to be okay or cool with like starting to like venture out a little bit.
Well, and I think that it's like, if you're competing with flippers who need to make money, you're actually in a good position, because if you're trying to buy a house that you want, the assumption, wait, did I say against flippers who do it all the time? Yeah. So if you're buying a fixer upper because you want to live there and you don't need to have a profit margin on it or have like it turned around in a certain time, you're actually in a pretty good position, because you're able to say, you know what, I can even overpay according to the current, what I feel like is the current market price right now, because I know we're going to keep this house. My gut is we're going to keep it at least 5 years. It could be as much as 20. So it doesn't matter if we pay another $50,000 right now, because it's going to be over time. We're not even going to think about it, especially if it's a mortgage.
Yeah.
And that's a really big advantage actually over flippers, because flippers have to know that they can like take that house, fix it up, and sell it within like 12 months. Like, they're not trying to.
And make a profit quickly.
And make a profit and make a decent profit.
Right.
So actually, if you're not doing it, so that I think is important.
Unless you're willing to like if you just like, you want to get into flipping, like buy something that you can live in and do the work in yourself while you do that. I mean,
oh my God, I'm so glad
my first place.
Not for, wait, sorry. Angelica, you finish your thing, but then just remember, somebody remind me capital gains.
2 years.
Yeah. So that's another big thing. If you live in your place for 2 years, you don't pay capital gains. If you're one person, for the first $250,000 of an increase in the price. If you're a couple that are married, it's $500,000.
It's up to $300,000 each now.
Oh, it is up to $300,000?
Thanks, Trump.
So like our house in Kingston, which we didn't really fix up, but we're selling that, but we lived in it as a primary residence for 2 years so that we are not going to pay any, and this was like kind of coincidental, but we're not going to pay any taxes on any of that profit for selling it now. So that is one way to do, like, there are people who just do that. They live in a house for 2 years, sell it, live in a house for 2 years, fix it up, sell it. That's like the slow flip, which I think is actually pretty cool. Because to Jen's point, like if you're actually going to be in a house, our recommendation is always like wait 12 months to do almost anything, because nature changes, the season, nature has much bigger impact on the house than it would in an apartment. So it's like, you may be like, oh man, what we really want is a pool. And like, I'm willing to forego a ton of stuff to have an amazing pool. Or you may think you really want a pool. And then you decide, actually, what I really want is like more storage. Like, yeah, and you don't know that right away. So
definitely live in the house for a little bit before you start doing anything. 100%.
If you can do that, it is like 100% amazing.
Also, if I may say, like you said at the beginning, there are different levels to fixer upper, and everyone sort of has a different definition for that. And I think that people who are like quote unquote flippers, who are really looking to like turn it over, make a profit, tend to be looking for something that's a lot rawer than what we're sort of guiding,
categorizing as that.
Something that has more just potential as opposed to like a gut renovation.
I think that's true because a lot of the people are also contractors. So they're getting basically their own labor at wholesale. So that's like, and the materials too. And they're getting like a lot of different discounts. I think that's actually a really good point. And what was I going to say about that? About the, it'll come back or not, whenever.
Or if you're a live in it flipper like me, you need something that you can live in and then do some of the work yourself and know what you want to pay for to have professionals do, which I would recommend all the trades. And then everything else you can do yourself.
And somebody asked for, what is a fixer upper versus a house that could do with a new bathroom, kitchen, and paint? And it's like,
that's subjective, right?
It's subjective. And that's what we're deciding is that like, and it's really subjective because it really is like one person, like will go into like Jen's house and be like, I need to paint the walls. I went into our kitchen in Kerhonkson and was like, oh, this is pretty cute. And Rob was like, this is disgusting. We have to tear it out. So it's actually like, it's literally subjective. The thing I was going to say actually is what strangely, the easiest stuff to fix is the big stuff, like the roof, the septic, things like that like really a lot of our clients are super, super afraid about. But if you have a broken septic system, or you have also septic, most of the sellers would have to fix it. But like, let's say you're buying something as is, it needs a new septic system. You get a price on it, and then you decide if that's too much money. And then you put it in. Like, you're not like, what do we want for our septic? Like, I don't know, let's go to Ann Sachs and look at it. Like there's no conversations. Or like your roof also, like you may have to have like one moment of decision-making of like, do we want metal? Do we want like asphalt shingle? Do we want like standing seam? But it's pretty damn easy. And we see a ton of people getting scared about stuff like that and walking away when actually that is so much easier than renovating a small bathroom and having to pick out all the tiles, all the fixtures, all the fittings, decide the placement. It's just a lot less work. So I think that's one thing I would say is don't be scared of that. And even things like we had a fun conversation about mold today at our team meeting this morning. And it's like, a lot of places have mold up here. That's just like real. It's like damp or whatever. And they're all like in basements or dirt crawl places. Mold, everything that you see just has a cost associated with it. That's it. Like, so Jen is not cleaning out an entire moldy basement. Like if it was a problem that was going to be a health hazard, it's going to be like, let's call the mold remediation company. They're certified. Let's get them to do this. And then if the cost is $5,000, maybe that's great. If the cost is $20,000, maybe you don't buy that house. Or you begin to negotiate with the seller on it. But even if it's $20,000, like I'm not saying even that, like don't buy a house with a $20,000 mold problem, because if you have that in your budget, no big deal. Buy that house because it's going to be so easy. Because again, you're not talking to the mold guys about like fun
the finish of the right.
Or trying to like line up everything in the project to go in at the same time and have subs available at the same time. Like the project management side of things, I think is something that a lot of people end up getting really surprised and blindsided by because they didn't think about how much logistics goes into doing a renovation, even just a small bathroom, in terms of
I'll
getting
say
all the
this, it's like
materials
a
that you
wedding
need
on
on the
crack.
time you need it. It's like, yeah, like a wedding.
It's like a wedding of all of these different vendors, and everyone's got all of these things,
Mm-hmm.
and like you're just like waiting for like one thing, to Megan's point of like a door, waiting on one, like a door actually means that this can't get done. And it just like it's like the domino effect of like one thing not getting to get done right away makes it so like 10 other things that you think have nothing to do with it can't get done until that gets done.
Sometimes it's one part.
Yeah.
Like I needed a drain, and nowhere around here had the size and finish of the drain that I needed. So I had to overnight a drain from somewhere on the internet somewhere for like 10 times more than it would have cost to like get it locally, because it wasn't available locally because materials aren't available.
Can we make cupcakes?
Yes, please make cupcakes.
Yes, Rex, you can make cupcakes.
Rex, make cupcakes. So here's a question.
We can make green ones.
Is this a good time? I mean, it's always a good time, right? Like, if
Yeah, this is a good time, because like what we're saying is people are afraid of doing work. So if you're not afraid of doing any work and you're willing to do a lot of stuff yourself and live in a house that's kind of ugly or something with things you don't like for a little bit, 100% this is a great time, because you know most buyers want something turnkey.
I think it's a really good point, that like what we've seen, like you know, we're talking about like the super competitive nature of this market for buyers, how it's really hard to find a house, the multiple offer situations. That is really disproportionately, like the homes that are turnkey are so much more impacted by that, like by a ton. Now that said, like I said, if somebody saw Jen's house and you're like, man, I can just paint that, I can paint that kitchen, paint those walls, like you would also have people fighting over it. There was actually a great house in Hurley that we represented a client so when we work with people on the listing side, so if they're buyers or people who do this kind of work, then the listing agents on the team, myself and Danny, will often work with them to help them identify properties and be like, okay, and if you do this and this and this, you'll be able to sell it for X, Y, or Z, or like, this is what we're hearing from the buyers agents on our team about what people want and what we're seeing selling. That really was a fixer upper, but it looked cool. And they also had like 8 offers, you know? So it's just like, it depends, but in general, 100% true. Like if you want to like look for the house that needs some work, that has ugly pictures, and that's in a like slightly less known location. Do we feel like there's a lot of materials on back order?
It took me forever just to get a stove and a refrigerator. Like we're still waiting on like just furniture. We're still waiting on things we ordered months and months ago. And finding anything that's like construction wise of like materials is just like a whole other ballpark of just like back order.
Which is weirdly, so like the extreme version of turnkey now that we're seeing being more popular are fully furnished homes.
Yeah.
Because just like we were talking about, like if you can live in a home for a while that like maybe it's not even 100% your taste. So like there's the amazing fully furnished homes. That's like one thing, but there's the like, hey, can I buy your furniture? Because like the side table I want is delayed, or it's going to take 2 months to get the sofa I want. And I'd rather have a sofa to sit on than nothing.
Well, when I bought the house in Sullivan, I bought the bed and I bought the dining room table, because I didn't want first of all, I was like buying as a second home. I didn't have any furniture. It wasn't like I was like moving, like we were, when we moved into this house, like moving my furniture from here to here. Like I had 0 furniture. And I was like, you know what I want to be able to do? I want to be able to sleep there the first night and like have a meal that like isn't on the floor. So like buying these 2 things that like may or may not have been like, I mean, the dining room table I liked, but like it's like a random bed. It was just like, you know what? It's totally fine. And like, I'd rather just get that and be able to start using it than trying to like the first day I closed, trying to figure out where to like go find a mattress locally to like get it delivered or whatever.
And this is the other, I mean, so this is the other thing we didn't talk about, but like, where do you live while this is happening? So if you live in New York City and you're trying to renovate a place up here, then just keep in mind that like every time your contractor is like, like something weird's happening with this wall, like I need to make a decision, you're gonna have to get in a car or a bus or a train and drive up 2.5 hours to have that conversation, or some things you can do on FaceTime, whatever. If you're waiting for a sofa to be delivered, you get like a 12-hour window. You're gonna be like standing outside your house. So it's
Or you
another,
can pay someone to do that stuff for
Yes.
you. Like some of my design work is just like accepting deliveries sometimes.
right, and it's true that property managers also will do that sometimes. And there are like, there's a role that I haven't heard about a lot here, but I know there was a friend of mine who was doing it called owner representative, which is basically like the liaison between the person doing the work and the contractors. And so they would go and check on things and accept deliveries and be like, oh, this isn't actually the faucet you ordered. Like, and get that done before it gets like installed. So the last question, which is like probably the hardest question, is how to find contractors and subs in a small town. I mean, there are other questions, but I think some of them we've been answered. I think you just ask everybody. You literally
ask
like,
everyone.
Agree. Like literally go when you're at the grocery store. I know this is hard, like COVID friendly, but like when I said make friends with everyone at Home Depot, like legit, like if I go to the Home Depot in Monticello, like most of the people that work there know me by name. And it's because I've like chatted them up and like I know the like guy in plumbing, like whatever. But also like if I need someone, they see everyone that comes into the store as well. And like your local hardware store, I also is like a great place that like, we were in our local hardware store here and there was a contractor that was like picking up something. We started chatting him up. We got his card. Like, it just was like, again, like I kind of out and about and being able just to ask people and not being afraid to just be like, we're having a totally random conversation with so-and-so and be like, do you know any like good like painters? Like that, and being able to just like ask around.
and if
Everybody knows somebody up here.
Yeah.
And if you see anybody who's doing work, like if your neighbor that's important. Because the thing is that like what happens with the contractor who you meet at the hardware store, how do you know if they're good or not? That's kind of like the next thing, because like, and you want to get a reference, but then like they're going to give you references that say they're good. So it's like, sometimes you just have to take a little risk, and depending on how big it is, that's completely fine. Also like Angie's List and Google and stuff up here is like
Nextdoor.
Yeah,
Nextdoor is really good here.
Nextdoor is really good here. It's like they're tiny, but like that is where I see a ton of people, and people will say like, I did my deck with this person. Photo, like.
And it's actually like not mostly like I would say, I don't know, Nextdoor for the areas that I am part of. It's like mostly people who have lived here their whole lives, who are on there, who are able to recommend local people who they know well, and have done lots of stuff with. So it's actually a really awesome resource.
Yeah.
And we're going to have, like I said, we're going to have this social network, private social network that we're going to be announcing shortly that like, will be a way to facilitate this. But it's like, that is the work. So like, think about that as the work. It would be like starting a business and being like, I don't really care who I have. I'm just gonna get some people, it's like the first most important part of your project is to find the right people for it and then to manage them.
And everybody up here has someone for something. Like ask your Airbnb host. I got a couple of recommendations for people from one of my Airbnb hosts, and like ask your agent, ask the listing agent. These people all know people up here.
Yeah. And I think that like the last thing that I would say, and this is not to be like whatever, well, this won't be the last thing, because it's kind of a downer note, but like we got a recommendation recently from our plumber who we absolutely love for the septic company that we were going to use, aforementioned problem here, and they totally ripped us off. And I wasn't here, my husband was talking to them. They were like, oh, we need to like locate your septic, which is like, there's only one place literally it could be, it's like 3 feet from the house. And they were going to charge us $1,600 to find our septic system, which is like
not pump it, not fix it, just find it.
Just to find it. And
super
I was like,
clear.
And I talked to this guy and I was like, you just sent us a bill for $1,100 to locate the septic. I was like, and you're saying you're coming out tomorrow with a digger to find it more or something. I was like, what is that about? And I was like, are you going to pump it at that point? He's like, no, that's outrageous. I can't pump it. Like I have to bring my equipment. And blah, blah. I'm like, our house was $90,000. Like I bet you $1 million. It is a metal tank that's 500 gallons. That is probably, there's like literally 10 feet between our house and the neighbor. It has to be in that one location because that's where the bathroom is. There's not a lot of options. Like, can I just take like a stick? Like that's actually what they do. That's the primitive way of doing it. They just take like a long pole and poke the ground. So he yelled at me. He made me feel shitty. And I was like, to the point that I almost was like, am I being like a jerk here? And I know this. We've recommended this to so many clients. I've done this a million times. Getting your septic tank pumped and located should cost like $350 unless you like are really doing something like outrageous, like maybe say $500 if they really got to spend a lot of time. So we hired another company to pump it. Keep in mind that he had said the next cost was going to be $500. So another company came out, we paid $500 to pump it, which is expensive actually. But I was like, I don't care. They can do it the next day. We need this done. And they came out, they didn't need to bring a digger. No, of course not. It was a foot below the ground. The guy already found it. So, and I had friends who worked with contractors who did an entire project for them, did a bunch of projects for them. They got to a certain point. They said, we want to move this one wall in our bathroom, expand the primary bathroom a little bit. And he was like, okay, great. That'll be $120,000. And they were like, what? So the problem is like everything in life. You can't assume just because something is good once that it's going to stay good. And that the recommendation you get, like I know our plumber gave us a recommendation with the best intentions, and that like probably this guy, because again, he almost convinced me that I was wrong because he was so like aggressive about it. Probably no one's ever complained because they just assume that this guy knows what he's doing, right? And he comes from a trusted source. So it's just like, it's just part of the process. It's just learning. It sucks. It's life. Houses are moving, like houses are complex things. People are complex things. So you're adding those two things together and it's got a level of complexity that can be a little intense sometimes. But again, you do it, you give birth to your little baby. And you're like,
I just want to answer the one question that came is it hard to take down cabinets?
No.
And I'm just going to I'll answer that. No, it's not hard to take them down. Usually the demo is not the hard part. It's finding out what someone did before to put the cabinets up. So it could be nice and clean and you go in and you like get your drill out and you like take them all down and it's perfect. It could be that like, well, I'll just say that we found like a Miller High Life when we like, like an empty Miller High Life, like in the wall when we like took down, like there's like, you just don't know, you just have to be prepared. You just don't know what you're going to get. And so it's like mentally preparing yourself and being like, watch a couple videos, see how some other people have done it and be okay with like, the hard part about taking our cabinets down wasn't taking them down. It's the like fact that once you take them down and they took the tile down, that's not smooth anymore.
Yeah.
So like that, so you have to fix the wall, which was great, which is totally fine. When we had the painters come, they did it. And it's like it's a perfect wall, but it's just like, a lot of things just aren't hard. And the only thing I think about renovation, home, doing it yourself renovation is just like preparing yourself mentally that once you do it, you just don't know what, like to Megan's point of like, once you open the walls, it's just like any house, you have no idea how like someone like Jerry Rigged like built it. And so like, it could be an easy fix or it could be something that like ends up being a little bit more, but usually in the end, it's worth it to get what you want.
I think it's also like, I think two other things. Oh my God, there's so many things. Okay. But I know it's 2:11. We're going to stop this in like 2 seconds, but like once you start doing renovations, you often have to bring things to current code, which is a different thing too. So there's certain things that like really trigger that. So depending on what you're doing, that's the other thing where you may end up with like more work than you thought. And depending on what you're doing, you may or may not need a permit. And depending on what you're doing, your contractor may tell you may or may not need a permit when you actually do need a permit. And the thing that happens when you get a permit is that the town assessor comes in, and this is actually a really important consideration depending on what you're doing. Anything you pull a building permit for, that is a reason for them to come in and reassess your home, which will cause your taxes to increase. So another call I would do at the beginning is to call the assessor and say, hey, we're thinking about just like refreshing the kitchen. They'll probably be like, we're not even gonna do anything about that. If you're like, we're thinking about adding a guest cottage, that's a conversation. And then they'll be like, okay, great. Like, so we're going to add another $200,000, which will add $4,000 or $5,000 a year for you for taxes. knowing that in advance is really important, I think. And it's like, it's so good. Like, get to know your, like, the good thing about being in small places is you can call the building department, you can call the zoning people, you can call the assessor. We had that conversation this morning too. We always tell our clients to do that themselves. We can call for them, but it's better if you do it yourself because you can hear really what they're saying and you can like ask follow-up questions. You can start to build a relationship with them. And it's not scary. The scary thing is that they may only be in the office like from 1 to 3 on Thursdays, but you know.
It's not scary. I think all of it's just not as scary if you start to like prepare yourself and like be okay, like have the conversation with yourself ahead of time and be okay. Like this is going to be a journey and we're going to figure it out. And like, we're going to go on some wild turns, but like at the end, we're going to get it to where we want to go. And like putting those buffers in for yourself, putting the time buffers in, putting the budget buffers in from the get-go, set yourself up for success in a way that like you're not then trying to like justify to yourself that you made the right decision. You've kind of already set yourself up for that success.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you guys for sticking on so long here. This is obviously one of our favorite topics. So
I know we could talk about forever.
Yeah. So come back, you know, I don't know if we're doing this next. Well, we'll talk about that. It's like next Thursday, actually Christmas Eve it is, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Maybe that may be one to quit. I mean,
it could be just like you, like next to like a fireplace, like Megan's corner or something.
Yeah.
Yeah. I feel like you're hot toddy.
That sounds pretty great, actually. So yeah, so I think that like, you know, again, like just let us know if you have any, you can always DM me topics. If you have topics for this, like post them in the things, like we have a bunch of stuff coming up, but we're trying to make them as useful as possible for everybody out there. And thanks for coming. And thanks, Jen. And thanks.
Happy Thursday.
And Lacey and our Upstate real estate team members, as we say in French, sort of.
Happy birthday, Megan.
Oh yeah, happy birthday. Hello. Yeah.
What now?
Huh?
I will be accepting gifts of Bjornkorn delivered to anywhere in Kerhonkson. I'll just go get it. Okay. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Thanks for coming.